Lux got buffed, and let me tell you something. We have a major shield problem. We have a major shield problem in the game now. We have only Serpent's Fang as our only anti-shield item. And we need an AP item that can reduce shield as well. Because I've matched against Lux, plus Jenna, plus Kai'Sa with Protect. You can't play the game because they have too much shielding. We need a shield item, anti-shield item. Please, Riot, we need it. Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Darkbreaker. I have been rank 1 multiple times in Legendary Queue and in Challenger pretty much every season. And as you guys can see here, for you guys who are not aware yet, I have made 85 guides in depth explaining different champions, how to play them. I've made them multiple times by the point that I don't feel like I have to repeat myself doing a guide about Shyvana, for example. I've made an ultimate jungle guide, ultimate guide for Baron lane, ADC, mid lane, support. I've made an in-depth wave management guide, best solo queue tips, what with best tips to climb in Legend. I've made so many guides, but fun fact is, a lot of times for the effort, people are not that interested into educational content, which is unfortunate because you put a lot of effort into it, and then people don't even watch them. I've made, for example, people have asked me multiple times for an item build guide, right? And I've made 2 item build guides that people don't or haven't even watched yet. Because apparently, if it's not clickbaity, super clickbaity, people will not watch it. Or if it's not like super entertaining, the YouTube audience prefers more entertainment than educational content. Sadly, I mean, that's the hard reality that people apparently don't realize, because I can check the numbers, etc. But I've been planning to make one video regarding champion pool, because I think it's very important for you guys to understand, since we're talking about the tier list, champion pool is very important. You don't want to, I mean, you can be a one-trick pony and reach challenger, but a lot of times you should extend your champion pool and you should have like a minimum base knowledge about some champion for each position. And if you guys want to know what champions are the best in each position, and you want to know the opinion from a challenger player that has been challenger every season and has been ranked 1 in Legendary Queue, then yes, definitely stay tuned, because you guys will learn and understand what champions are good, in my opinion, in this meta. We had a nice little patch recently, so I'm gonna give you my in-depth opinion about each champion, why they are good and why they are not good. So you better listen to it if you guys don't want to be a hardfuck diamond that is backseating in my Twitch chat, okay? Listen and understand. I mean, I'm kind of memeing, but you guys figure it out. So, we have 85 guides. Apparently people think I don't make any guides. I have made in-depth guides. 40-minute video, Yone combo guide. I am legend in wildrift. Best tips to climb in Legendary Queue. 50 minutes. And people tell me I have not uploaded educational content. I have both. Educational content, voiceovers, stream highlights or stream footage. I mean, if you want 10 videos in 1 year, then yeah, I can do only educational content, sure. But if you guys want like daily content, then need to find the right balance between doing everything. Like, people want a lot of people, or most people actually want entertainment content. That's the audience. That's the YouTube audience that wants this. And by the way, if you don't like my content, you can always just click on not interested instead of making a Reddit post to rant. Oh, Karen, you're so mad. I mean, honestly, at this point, I don't care that much about the opinion from Redditors, because no matter what you do, no matter what type of content you make, there will be always people that will never like cherish whatever you do. Like, I could make 100 guides and they will always try to trash talk about whatever reason, by the way. Okay, enough talking about this. I hope this wasn't too much. I will have a timestamp for each section, so if this blah 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 was too much for you, you have timestamps. let's get started with Baron lane. We have a lovely order. Mad Labs is kind of buggy right now, so I had to remake everything on tier maker. We have broken section. And as you guys can see, in wildrift we just have a lot of broken champions. What can I say, man? We have a lot of broken champions, accept the reality. These champions are broken. If you guys are not agreeing with it, then that's your opinion, and my opinion is those champions are broken. We have broken S tier, A tier, B, C, and trash. Trash means I hate this champion, don't play this champion. C tier means average, B is like, okay, not bad, A is like, pretty good, S is like, yeah, damn good, pretty solid most of the times, and broken is, just pick this champion, abuse them if you guys want to reach Challenger the easy way. If you guys want to, you can obviously just play Kale to Challenger in Baron lane, but I think you have like some, I think you have like a masochist kink or something. You like to get punished, you like to get smashed by 3 people at the same time. I mean, you do you. I don't judge you. I don't judge you. Who am I to judge you? Feel free to play Kale, my friend, my buddy. Do it. No problem. But anyways, enough talking. So, Aatrox broken. Why is this champion broken? Listen, okay? This champion has a lot of crowd control, he's super tanky, he has insane amount of sustain, and he just does so much damage. He's like everything. Tons of damage, super tanky, what do you want more in a Baron laner? And he wins most matchups. Akali, one of the best assassins in the game, huge playmaking potential and high skill ceiling. 1 vs 1, she has the potential to beat almost every champion, and then in team fights her assassination potential is very good to carry games. Camille, super solid laner, high mobility with a hook shot, then the ultimate to catch people in team fights, very good split pusher, has true damage as well, just super solid pick overall. Garen is one of the most beginner friendly Baron laners. If you guys want to practice and learn Baron lane, or you want to extend your champion pool, like I said, then Garen is your go-to pick. He has silence, he has insane amount of sustain with the passive, he's super tanky thanks to his third ability, his ultimate does true damage, and his third ability has a lot of base damage, plus with Hullbreaker you can be a good split pusher, and with Stoneplate and second ability you are an amazing tank. Gwen got buffed, or should I... yeah, it's a buff. They slightly nerfed the passive damage, but they reduced the cooldown of the third ability by 3 seconds in the early game. This is pretty much a very big change for jungle Gwen and Baron lane Gwen, making her early game way better. Her late game might be a little bit weaker, but overall I don't think it matters because the main damage comes from the ultimate anyways. Gwen has true damage, and she is one of the best anti-tank killers in the game, and her assassination potential in teamfights is also crazy thanks to her ultimate, and she can block projectiles with the second ability. Gragas is also a versatile champion. You can play him either as an AP burst champion in the Baron lane, or as a tanky champion with high ability haste, and you're just spamming abilities, knocking them up over and over and over again, and his ultimate is very good for playmaking potential. Overall a very solid pick. Jax, one of the best split pushers in the game. Overall in the early game he's pretty solid, but in the late game he becomes an unstoppable split push beast. Watch my split push guides if you guys haven't done it yet to understand how to split push correctly. Maybe I will do an updated split push. I actually wanted to do an updated Baron lane split push guide pretty soon. But I guess I should play more Jax so I get like more footage for you guys. Next one is gonna be Renekton. Overall one of the most complete, I think that's the right word, complete Baron laners. He is strong in the early game, he is a great duelist, he has hard crowd control, he has mobility, his ultimate gives him tankiness, or gives him a lot of HP and AoE damage. So this champion is overall very versatile and solid. Wukong has insane amount of sustain, super solid in the 1 vs 1, and absolutely amazing in the team fight thanks to his ultimate. He is one of the best champions in both Baron lane and jungle, a super versatile Baron laner, or champion, or bruiser. Bruiser is the right word. Now let's move on to Shen. I think in competitive, Shen is super good thanks to his ultimate value and the coordination and the split push coordination and the team for joining blah and pressure you can generate with this champion. But I think in solo queue it's kind of hard to pull it off correctly, because at the end of the day, when you play solo queue, you have 4 clowns most likely. So synergizing the ultimate correctly and abusing the split push factor with Shen is not as easy in solo queue as it would have been in a coordinated environment in competitive. But overall, the ultimate has great value. He has the taunt, his lightning phase is good. He kind of gets outscaled against a few divine Hardbreaker split pushers, but overall, a very solid champion. Next one, we have Riven, a high mobility burst damage champion, great duelist, and good carry potential in teamfights as well. Darius is a champion with great carry potential thanks to his Noxus Might and thanks to his reset mechanic on the ultimate. Whenever he kills someone and he does true damage as well, he has a lot of sustain as well, and he's tanky on top of that, a typical Juggernaut. But the main problem about this champion is him getting kited against high mobility, crowd control, poke team comps. So this is the main concern when you're playing Darius. You want to play him into tanky or melee compositions, so it's easier for you to catch them and just keep getting those resets. Fiora, one of the best duelists in the game, has true damage, really strong split pusher, but I kind of found myself struggling with her recently, that I feel like her carry potential, maybe it's S+. Honestly, maybe it's broken if you're like a god Fiora, but I am a wash boomer. I put a S tier because I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough on Fiora. I feel like a lot of times, even if you're winning your lane, you will end up struggling to carry the game later on. Maybe Scar. I wasn't sure if I should put a broken or S tier. I wasn't sure for Fiora. I was thinking maybe, but I've been struggling lately playing Fiora in this meta. Or maybe you just have to be a Giga Chat, you're always dominating your lane, you create insane amount of split push pressure with Hullbreaker, and they are always forced to bring 2 people onto you, and you're still beating up 2 people, 1 vs 2 if you're like a cracked Fiora. So maybe if you're like a Giga Fiora Chat, broken. But for me, I think S tier is more than fine, or like maybe in between. Both ranks. Now Dr. Mundo, I've played Dr. Mundo with health recently, and I have to say, Dr. Mundo very strong. Like even against Fiora, I've seen Dr. Mundo is stronger than expected. His base damage is really good, he's super tanky, so overall I think he is pretty fine in S tier. Now Malphite, great engager in team fights, super tanky as well, great against melee team comps, or should I say against AD team comps. Sion got buffed. Yeah, he's overall super solid. Great split pusher, can also be great frontliner with high crowd control in teamfights. Urgot, I think overall his early game is pretty strong. His teamfighting is also very good, with his catch potential on the 3rd ability, and the ultimate as a finisher and AoE fear can be also pretty good. Nice E-flash combo to catch people. Overall very tanky and does decent amount of damage. Jace, very strong lane bully, great split pusher, but I found myself struggling with him in late game because he kind of falls off in late game, where he just doesn't carry as hard as some other champions. But yeah, he's still one of the strongest lane bullies in the game. Canoness. That great Juggernaut, overall has true damage, has huge shield, has good crowd control, has great playmaking potential. Cannon got buffed. Early game, he is very strong. His team fighting is also insane. Kind of falls off in the late game in the side lane, but in team fights, he is still pretty good overall. Akshan, a cheesy AD or a cheesy range champion in the Baron lane that can punish a lot of melee champions thanks to his range advantage. I think if you're playing well, you can snowball pretty hard in the Baron lane, but obviously as a range champion, you're also very vulnerable to ganks and getting punished by the enemy jungler. Graves. I think the main problem about this champion is that he's very scaling. In the early game, he's okay, but he really needs items. So when does he come online? Like 3 items. He needs 3 items to come online. So that's the main problem about Graves, in my opinion. Teemo very strong in the early game and very strong in the late game. In the mid game, he kind of falls off until he has death cap, but once he has like full item build, his shrooms in solo queue are very, very obnoxious. The problem is Teemo is also easy to punish because he's so squishy. So if the enemy jungler wants to, he can just screw you up completely. Sinch, one of the best scaling champions, insane in teamfights, great playmaking potential, great catch potential, but overall his early game is pretty weak. Zed, overall pretty solid, great assassin, great split pusher, high skill ceiling to make him work though in the matchup, because you need to beat up the enemy laner 1v1, and this requires a lot of skills, especially if you're against a champion that can stack up armor. Jarvan, overall decent team fighting champion, can hold the lane okay-ish. Nasus, kinda to scaling, early game pretty weak, but once he gets into late game, which will take some time, he can become pretty strong. Pantheon is exactly the other way, that is early game is very, very strong, and you want to snowball and you want to dominate your lane, but if you're not doing this and you're falling behind in the early game, you are screwed. And even if you're snowballing in the mid game, you will fall, in the mid and late game you will fall off, and then you won't do enough damage to kill the backline anymore, and then you can't do anything. Tryndamere, kind of same explanation as Nasus, that this early game is not that good, but once he's very similar to Graves, where I have to say that his early game is just pretty weak, but once he has like 3 items and he's scaling, he becomes a pretty decent threat. If you play against high crowd control, it's very hard to play him though. Yasuo, yeah, in the early game I think he's okay, but there are a lot of bad matchups for Yasuo in the Baron lane. He can work into the right team setups where they have some knock-up combos for him, and he scales like a truck, so he's viable. Do I think he's that good? Nah, I think there are just so many better options to play in the Baron lane. Olaf Baron lane, I'm definitely not a fan of it. I think it's hit or miss. Either it works into the right team comp or you're an Inter. And majority of the times when I see Olaf Baron lane, it's just an Inter. So I'm definitely not a fan of it. Next one, Vayne. Vayne and Lucian are cheesy range ADCs that can punish melee champions, but they are also very easy to punish by the enemy jungler. And trust me, in high elo, you will get punished super, super hard, especially because most range champions always play aggressive, trying to freeze the lane or trying to harass the enemy laner, that they are vulnerable to ganks. And yeah, Vayne and Lucian are very easy to punish. Kayle, early game, dog shit, scaling takes way too long and very easy to dive into punish. She is just, if you guys want to get smashed every game and you wanna be suffering for 50 minutes, then you play Kayle. And then between 15 and 20 minutes you're happy, because then you're strong. But before that, you're just weak. But yeah, that's gonna be it for Baron lane, and let's hop right into jungle. I feel like I'm talking way too much for this section already, and if I do this for the same amount, it's gonna take a lot of time. Okay, for jungle, Aatrox, same explanation as for the Baron lane. He is a very strong team fighting champion, high crowd control, high damage, super tanky. What can I say more? Insane amount of sustain. AP Gragas just one-shots people. Great playmaking potential. Great hyper carry potential. Diana, one of the best assassins in the game. A high mobility burst damage. Riven, high mobility plus super tanky with Twin Guard plus Dark's Gauge. Very good in the early game. Good playmaking potential. And she does a lot of damage. Evelynn, one of the best snowballing champions in solo queue, just works super, super well in solo queue environment thanks to invisibility. Olaf has true damage, has sustain, can ignore crowd control, just super good in solo queue. Kha'Zix, one of the best assassins in the game. He just one-shots you and has insane jungle pressure. Same for Lee Sin. High mobility, snowballing champion, insane burst damage. Wukong in teamfights works like a charm. He has a lot of sustain. He is insane in teamfights thanks to his ultimate that can knock multiple people up. And then Shyvana, one of the best hyper carries in solo queue. She just farms up, gets 400 stacks, has 3 items, and then she just runs everyone down. Just focus on farming, counter ganking, and if you get into the late game, Shyvana just carries teamfights so hard on her own. Yone. I think Yone is just one of the best late game champions, and in solo queue he just works super well. High mobility, playmaking champion with a shit ton amount of damage. Kayn. Kayn as a jungler has a lot of mobility and ganking potential. Whether you're using blue Kayn to farm some squishy champions or you're using red form with a crowd control, very good against very good against melee champions with a lot of HP because he scales with percentage damage. So the more tanky the opponents are, the more damage you will do, and the more you will sustain with Divine Sundra and the first ability. Was it first ability? Heal? I think so. But yeah. Kayn, overall pretty solid. Gwen, even better right now. Her early game is even better right now with the third ability buff. In the early game, kind of scaling, but late game, once she has 3 items, she just kills everyone with the ultimate and the 2 damage. Jarvan, lethality, and Bruiser, really popular. Either you build him tanky as a engager, team fighting champion, has insane jungle pressure in the early game, super strong in the early game, high ganking potential, can gank left and right, and with a lethality build you're just a glass cannon one-shotting people, ambushing playstyle. So Jarvan super strong right now. Jace, tons of damage, pretty much summarizing. Yes, tons of damage, very strong in the early skirmishes. Amumu, great in team fights with the ultimate. Nunu, great frontliner with high jungle pressure in the early game, ganking left and right. Fizz kind of scaling in the early game there. I would say you need 2 or 3 items, but once you get that point, you are just one-shotting people left and right. Great assassin overall. Morgana is a utility poking champion that wants to play teamfights slow, but she is very good in teamfights and stalling in the game and power farming thanks to her quick jungle clear speed. Xin Zhao, overall great package. He's tanky, he has crowd control, he does a lot of damage, he has a lot of sustain, decent mobility as well. Overall a very solid pick. Nautilus, whether you're playing him AP or tank build, has a lot of crowd control and can do a lot of damage. Overall very solid in teamfights and great ganking potential with his passive root, with a first ability hook and the ultimate to catch people. Vi is very similar to Xin Zhao, that she has great ganking potential with the first ability and the ultimate, has very good jungle clear speed, is tanky and does decent amount of damage. Rammus, great counter against melee champions. He is probably the best counter against melee champions, or should I say AD based champions, because he can just stack armor, and the more armor he has, the more damage he will do, and then he can also reflect damage. He has taunt, he has very good jungle ganking potential in the early game. His jungle clear speed is maybe not the best, so his scaling is not the best, and he will fall off against like high fast-paced power farmers like Shyvana. But if you apply enough pressure on the map with your spam ganking, you can snowball the map pretty well. But at the end of the day, if you're playing a tank, you're kind of relying on your teammates to be humans that are carrying the game later on. Lilia is a great counter against tanky champions because of her true damage. She has a lot of AoE damage, kind of scaling though, so her early game is kind of slow paced, but once she has like 3 items, she becomes a monster in teamfights with her AoE sleep ability. So she's very good in my opinion. Rengar is a snowballing assassin that can go either way. There are some games where you're just popping off and you're snowballing left and right and you're just one-shotting people, and there are some games where you're not winning in the early game and you are completely useless. So kind of inconsistent champion, and that's why he is A tier in my opinion. Shen, if we were talking about competitive, I would rate him higher, but in solo queue, I think You can't abuse the ultimate advantage as good as you could be in a coordinated setup, so I think A tier is pretty fine. He has the taunt as ganking potential and the ultimate to join teamfights or counter ganks, so I think that's pretty good. But overall, at the end of the day, you're not a hyper carry, and you need to be a hyper carry in solo queue most of the times. Urgot, very good jungle clear speed, good ganking potential, super solid overall. Same for Zed, that he's a champion that has great ganking potential with the ultimate. Kind of high skill ceiling though. Camille, kind of slow pace, high mobility, good ganking potential with the ultimate. Fiora, strong in the early game skirmishes, and when she's snowballing, she can get a huge lead and she becomes very hard to deal with. The problem is probably that her team fighting is not as good as some other champions that have an easier time carrying games when they are ahead. Graves, to scaling in my opinion, in the early game not that good, but once he has like 3 items, he becomes a truck and he just one-shots people, or he becomes like super strong. Aurelia, should I not? I'm not sure I should put S tier. High skill ceiling assassin with great playmaking potential. Her ganks are decent. Her team fighting can be pretty good, but I think 8 is fine, yeah. She's very snowbally, like she needs to snowball. If she doesn't snowball, she has a big problem, to be honest, in team fights. Like, I think if you're behind on the Aurelia, you will never carry a game. Yeah, like you can come back. Like if you're not snowballing, you never can come back as an Aurelia, most of the times. She's a very snowball-reliant champion. I think that's a major problem. Because if you're not snowballing, you will not have enough sustain, and you can't soak up any damage in teamfights then. Darius, overall, pretty fast jungle clear speed. I think the problem of this champion is, like I said, getting kited. Getting kited is a big problem on Darius, but he has good carry potential overall. I think if you're playing against a lot of melee champions, I would rate him S tier, but if you, overall, there are some champions with high mobility or crowd control, then probably just A tier. Yasuo, to scaling, but in the right setup, he can work like a charm and his scaling is insane. Pantheon, early game, very good, jungle pressure, but late game, dogshit. Pyke, I think they nerfed his jungle clear pretty hard, that he's not that fast anymore. He has some nice playmaking potential, but you're also kind of reliant on your teammates to do damage for you to clean up with your ultimate. Jax, B tier, I think he's just too scaling in the early game and too slow, but once he gets going, he can be pretty good. Akshan, kind of too cheesy if you're not doing good in the early game. I think you will always be a minion that gets farmed on CD. Very cheesy assassin, I would say. Cheesy ambush assassin playstyle that needs to snowball in the early game. Master Yi is hit and miss. I mean, some games he will pop off and snowball and just run down everyone, but at the same time, it's very easy to counter him with crowd control. Tunimet to scaling, or to slow paced in the early game. Twitch kind of hit and miss, like a very snowball reliant champion that wants to cheese in the early game, similar to Akshan. Sinch, a cheesy champion as well that is weak in the early game, has some nice ganking potential, but I think, I mean, B is fine. B is like, he's okay. He's not super strong, but he's okay. Late game he scales like a truck though. Kayle, I think Kayle jungle is viable, that she can AFK farm and pray she gets to 15 plus minutes and then she carries. I mean, that's K playstyle. Let's move on to mid lane. So for mid lane, we have the same broken champions as always. Pyke, in my opinion, one of the best playmaking champions, snowballing champions in the game, in the mid lane. Just insane playmaking potential. Ahri, high mobility assassin with good playmaking thanks to her taunt, or should I say charm. Akali, one of the best assassins in the game, does a lot of damage. Akshan in the mid lane, one of the strongest early game champions, completely dominating most lane matchups, and then he's just rotating left and right, trying to gank people and snowball from there, and it works like a charm in solo queue. Karma is just an insane utility poking mage that is broken in team fights. Zoe, what can I say? Too much poke damage. It's disgusting to play against a fat Zoe. It's unplayable. If you play against a fat Zoe, it's unplayable. Like, she pokes you from, I don't know, from downtown, and you can't do anything about it. You just can't play the game. You can't move anywhere. You want to go somewhere, boom, you're already low life again. You want to come close to the objective, boom, you're low life. You can't play the game against a good Zoe player, especially if she has like a few kills in the early game. Corki, just very strong teamfight champion thanks to his package. Diana, insane teamfighting, burst assassin, high mobility. Aurelia, super strong snowbally champion in the mid lane. She works way better in the mid lane than in the jungle because she has so many better matchups and she just snowballs like a truck, and then in teamfights she's just so strong. Kassadin, in the early game kind of weak, but once he gets going, 3 items. Once you have 3 items, it's GG. 4 items, just surrender the game. 4 items, death cap, void staff, it's GG. At this point, Kassadin wins every game. Like 90% of the times, if Kassadin makes it into 4 items and the game is not like 0-20, he will win the game. So he's like an auto Uno reverse card. Like the moment 4 items, GG. Katarina, 1 reset, you just wipe them all, GG easy. Snow, solo queue, GG easy. Literally, 1 reset, you can be 0-5, 1 reset, boom, pentakill. And she turns the game. And it works every fucking time in solo queue, even in Challenger. Yone, one of the strongest late game champion, playmaking champion in the game. Like, that's it. That's a summary. Even in the early game, he's not weak, by the way. But 3 items, the moment 3 items, 4 items, 5 items, boom. Just boom. Just go home and cry. At this point, you can't play against Yone anymore. He's just one-shotting everyone. Fizz, in the early game, not the strongest, but one of the best scaling assassins as well. It just one-shots people. Zed, insane assassin in the mid lane, high skill ceiling. Galio, tanky utility, poking champion, just so good with the ultimate to join, and the taunt as well. I love Galio players, by the way. I love Galio mains. I'm so happy every time I have a Galio main. If I have a good Galio main, I'm so happy because I have frontline, he has the utility, he has playmaking potential, and he has good poke. What else do you want from a mid laner? Like, whenever I have a Galio, I'm like, yeah, easy game, good front, I have frontline, yes, a frontline, GG easy. So yeah, be a Galio main, guys. Be a Galio main. I need more Galio mains. But be a good Galio main. Please hit your taunt or hit your knockups. Use your ultimate correctly. I've seen so many Galio players that can use the ultimate. Garen overall solid tank. What can I say? I mean, I explained it in Baron Lane part already. Gregors, I already explained it. Great poking mage with good utility or playmaking potential. Lucian, high mobility burst damage. Jay, super strong in the laning phase, good poking damage, thoughts of in the late game. Cannon, decent laning phase, insane in teamfights. Lux got buffed. And let me tell you something. We have a major shield problem. We have a major shield problem in the game now. We have only Serpent's Fang as our only anti-shield item. And we need an AP item that can reduce shield as well. Because I've matched against Lux plus Jenna plus Kai'Sa with Protect. You can't play the game because they have too much shielding. We need a shield item, anti-shield item. Please, Riot, we need it. Please. But yeah, Lux, cooldown, reduce. She can spam shield. I think 8 seconds without ability haste. So with ability haste, it's like 5 seconds. Shield. And with Protect, enchantment, huge shield. What can we do? So if you play against Lux mid lane with Jenna support and Kai'Sa ADC, and they can't build Serpent's Fang, or they only have 1 Serpent's Fang, you literally can't kill them. We have a huge shield problem coming. And now the next champion, Orianna, she also got buffed. So now another late game scaling utility poking mage with a huge shield is getting buffed. So yeah, Orianna, very strong utility poking mage in teamfights, just Her early game might be a little bit weaker now because they nerfed the armor, the base armor, but honestly, they buffed the first and second ability, so she does way more damage now. They also buffed Vega ultimate. Actually, Vega ultimate is gonna be fancy. Vega ultimate, the more AP you have, the bigger the ultimate. So you can have like a huge ultimate. How to attract new Vega mains? Well, yeah, I think Vega, in the early game, he's kind of weak, and he doesn't have good roaming potential, but his utility value in teamfights when you have frontline with the cage is insane, and his one-shot potential with the ultimate is also insane. So let's say 3-4 items Vega, if you're not inting in the early game, and you have the right team setup, you're out winning. Like, a good Vega cage in teamfight is cracked, by the way, but there are not that many good Vega players, to be fair. I think a good Vega player is a pain in the ass, but people don't appreciate or know how to play him correctly with the right team setup. If you have like 1 or 2 tanks, then Vega in teamfights is almost unplayable. If you have frontline for Vega, he's almost unplayable at 3+ items. Same for Orianna, by the way. If you have those backline poking mages with tons of utility, if they have 1 or 2 tanks, it's almost unplayable. Yasuo, insane late game scaling gods, Singed, insane catch potential and very good scaling champion as well. Super tanky, great catch potential, high utility, and a lot of crowd control. Twisted Fate, if you have brain, and I know my viewers have all brain, right? My viewers are intellectual beasts. They're watching all of my guides, all of my 85 guides, they have watched them. So they are intellectual superior than all the average wildrift players. And if you know how to play Twisted Fate with this ultimate, you can snowball the game so well. You have insane catch potential with the gold card and the ultimate to snowball games. And with the rapid fire cannon, you are shooting your gold card from Nirvana and then you're just 2-tapping people. And with the right team setup, like let's say you have a Singed top lane with a Nautilus and Twisted Fate, I'm telling you, you can't play the game. Too much crowd control and too much catch potential. You can't walk into any brush without getting caught, but to be fair, most people don't know how to play those catch compositions anyways. But in theory, it's broken. In theory, it's unplayable, but people are just too bad for it. Twisted Fate is actually very good, but people don't know how to play him. That's the problem. Echo, 2 scaling, but 3+ items, just so strong. Aurelion Soul, very hard to play, can be very good in teamfights though, kinda weak in the early game, good roaming potential though. Brand, bad roaming potential, can be good into the right team setup with high poke damage and percentage damage against tanky champions. So if you're facing, like, let's say you're facing a lot of tanks, but they are not that... They have not insane hard engage, then Brand is a good pick. Plus you need frontline. If you have no frontline on Brand, it's almost unplayable. Pantheon, ultimate to snowball the game, pretty good. Early game also good. Mid game, he kind of starts to fall off. I already explained it by now. Any great catch potential with the Tibbers, can turn teamfights. But her early game is pretty weak and her roaming is also weak or bad in the early game. And a lot of games are determined by the snowballing from the early game. Ziggs, I moved him wrong by the way. Ziggs is S tier, very similar to Orianna. He got buffed as well, so his poking damage is cracked. Lilia, 2 scaling, can be pretty good in teamfights though. Gwen in mid lane, also 2 scaling, pretty weak in the early game, gets punished by a lot of champions. Morgana, also weak in the early game, has good wave clear later on, not in the early game. In the early game she loses against a lot of champions, has good poke and utility in teamfights. Kayle, very scaling champion, and to be fair, she is allowed to scale in the mid lane way better than in the Baron lane, so I think in the mid lane Kayle has potential to be pretty good. I would say, yeah, level 10 plus 3. Now you need 4 items and level 15 to be honest, that's when you're popping. But if you're just focusing on farming and not dying, I think Kayle can be good into the late game, and pray your teammates are not inting. Lulu mid lane. Honestly, if you have like a hyper carry, this can work. I think her poking damage and her wave clear in the mid lane are not that bad, and she can enchant or buff someone up to be a hyper carry. Seraphine got buffed. My opinion about Seraphine is pretty much that her early game, she is a minion, she's very easy to kill, her wave clear is bad, she can't roam, if she tries to roam she gets killed. so she can't do anything besides hugging the turret and try to wave clear and scale. Her teamfights can be good though, and her late game with the right team setup can also be good, because she has a lot of utility and heal and whatever else, and the ultimate in teamfights. But overall, in the early mid game, I don't like her. But the good Seraphina ultimate can be very good though. I don't say she can't be good. I'm just saying it's hard for her to be good. You need the right team setup. She's hard to play. Like, do you understand how many champions fuck her up? Like Aurelia, Diana, Zoe, Akshan, Akali, Yone, Zed, Fizz. All of those champions are shitting on her. She can't survive 1 vs 1. She can't. Just can't. She can't roam. Like, they will push the wave in, and then they're rotating and snowballing. What can she do? She's AFK. That's why there's so many champions where I'm like putting them down, because in the early game they can roam and the others are just doing whatever they want on the map, shitting on all of your side laners while you're AFK under the turret, scared of going into the brush. Because if you go or enter the brush while an assassin is already sitting waiting for you there, you're one-shotted, and then it's just GG. And that's the problem about champions like Brand, Seraphine, Annie. You can't go into a brush without not getting one-shotted, unless you have like a support or jungler helping you out. Okay, let's move on to ADC. So for ADCs, we have some lovely ADCs that are broken. We have Samira, aka the ADC of the Katarina of ADCs. The one reset. Actually, she's just like, she jumps in and she just wipes everyone. She has too much sustain. Lucian, very strong in the early game, high mobility, tons of burst damage. Like, Lucian is hard to deal with. Like, if you have high mobility, you are the nightmare for any assassin or bruiser, especially if you're fat. Kai'Sa. Honestly, Kai'Sa is super solid at every stage of the game. She has the shield, she has stealth, she can reposition herself, her first ability is like 1 vs 1, she's like an assassin. Plus with I think we might enter a shield meta, by the way. Shield meta with supports like Lux or Janna, Enchanting, and Kai'Sa. And then Ezreal, high mobility, poking, ADC, scales like a truck in late game. 3 items Ezreal, unplayable. Unkillable and unplayable. Like, he just pokes you down. Corki, insane in teamfights. Tristana, a late game Yordle god, just runs you down. Especially with the Lulu or Yumu. 3 items, very hard. 4 items, it's game over. 4 core items, it's game over. You lost the game at this point. Same applies for Vayne. High mobility, condemn to stun you, stealth with the ultimate, can dash. True damage. With a Lulu or Yuumi, she just runs you down. 4 items. At 4 items, if you have not snowballed at 4 items and shit on her, she will win the game 90% of the times. At 4 items, she gets 1 shutdown. 1 mistake. You do 1 mistake and you lose the game every single time. She can be 0-4, she has 2 items, you give her 1 kill, she gets the 3rd item, the game is lost afterwards. AP Varus, just insane poking mage, or poking ADC mage. I mean, it's too much damage, especially against tanks. The more HP you have, the more percentage damage, the more damage he will do. He's just the greatest anti-tank counter, like one of the best anti-tank counters, similar to Vayne. Twitch and Jinx, weak in the early game, but late game monster truck. Same for Zeri, honestly. These champions are pretty weak in the early game, but once they have like 4 or 5 items, they become monsters in teamfights. Draven, on the other hand, is super strong in the early game. One of the most dominant ADC champions in the early game. High skill ceiling because of his positioning and the access he has to collect during the teamfights. He kind of also lacks like mobility to escape like assassins, so that's one of the issues, but in the right hands he is one of the most dominant snowballing ADC champions. Saya, over super solid and great counterplay with the feathers to bait people or lure them in, and the ultimate also good to dodge abilities. Caitlyn, overall a very solid ADC with high range or very long range. Jhin. I think Jhin will be much better when Collector comes out, but right now I think his early game is pretty strong. His mid game is also strong, but his late game, he just doesn't do as much damage as these hyper carry ADC champions. Misfortune also in the early game pretty strong, but falls off into the late game, so that's why just 8 here. Karma, Ziggs, Lux, and Orianna are great APCs. Ziggs, Orianna, and Lux also got buffed, so their poking damage is way better. But I think in solo queue, running APCs kind of requires good team synergy and having an ADC or tank, or an AD mid laner or a tank mid laner, because otherwise you will have too much AP damage. But yeah, I think Lux will be so good in this patch. Like, her shielding value is gonna be so good. I think Lux support is gonna be way better though. Orianna and Ziggs are gonna do so. I think these champions are gonna be like must picks in competitive now though. Morgana and Brand are similar but kind of weaker, especially in the early game, and also from the range factor they are not as good. Ashe, I think she just doesn't do as much damage. She has some nice utility with the ultimate, but that's about it. Senna ADC is really not that good. As a support she works way better, and she just doesn't do as much damage as the others and is too scaling. Akshan ADC, kinda cheesy, gets outranged against a lot of champions, so kinda questionable but playable. Same for Veigar, where he's too scaling and you need the right setup to make him work. So for support, dude, you know why these sections are getting so short in comparison? Because at this point I'm talking so long, I want to summarize this quickly. I feel like I'm talking for so fucking long. Yuumi, one of the most broken enchanters, same for Lulu. I always ban these two champions, by the way. Yuumi and Lulu, I always ban them. There are 3 champions I always ban. Yuumi, Lulu, or Pyke. These 3 champions. Because Yuumi and Lulu plus the hyper carry is unplayable in the late game. Karma, one of the best poking utility mages. Then Pyke, one of the best playmaking roaming supports. Rakan, Alistar, Gragas, Thresh, Galio, and Nautilus are insane playmaking champions with high crowd control, super tanky, great in teamfights. See, at this point I just want to summarize, but I can say it's like Rakan has the knockup, has the AoE charm, Alistar has the ultimate for damage reduction and the AoE knockup on a low cooldown, Gragas, third ability knockup, ultimate catch potential, Thresh hook plus lantern, Galio ultimate plus taunt, Nautilus super tanky, has the ultimate to catch people, first ability to catch people, and the passive to root people. Janna, great roaming, poking mage with shielding, protect enchantments, good disengager with the ultimate as well, and playmaker. Nami, bubble, good playmaking potential and disengage, same for the ultimate, gives attack speed and healing as well. Lux, insane amount of poking damage plus shielding value on a low cooldown right now, so that's pretty good. Braum, Leona, also solid tanks, but a little bit weaker than the others. Soraka, kinda team comp reliant that you need frontline to make her work. 2 tanks. If she has 2 frontliners, then Soraka is S tier. But a lot of times you will have Soraka without a frontline, then just A tier. Good healing value and silence, obviously, and global healing. But you need 2 tanks. Minimum 1 tank, 2 tanks, S tier, 1 tank, A tier. Senna. 2 tanks, S tier, 1 tank, or 0 tanks, A tier. Because you need frontline to make her work, that's a problem. Ashe, most Ashe supports are just inter, so that's why I put her B tier. She has great poke. She has great poke and playmaking potential with her utility, but most players are just too bad, and most players pick Ashe without a frontline, then it's unplayable. If you want to play Ashe support, 2 tanks, 2 frontliners. Wukong jungle and set Baron lane, something like that, then go for it, S tier, but without, B tier. Seraphine got buffed. I'm not a Seraphine enjoyer though, because I think her early game is too weak. To be fair, her ultimate and her healing in mid and late game is pretty good. I would say you have 2 tanks. I keep saying, you have 2 frontliners. Seraphine mid and late game could be A or S tier, not gonna lie. I've seen some very nasty Seraphine ultimates that are changing the game. But Seraphine in the early game is dog shit. That's the problem, and you need the right team setup. So if you're picking here with 2 frontliners, potential to be S tier, but most people are inters. Same for the Sona, by the way. Same explanation. Morgana, very weak in the early game, can be good as a poking mage and bind to catch people in ultimate and team fights in the mid and late game with the right team setup. Could be A tier. Brand, right team, 2 frontliners. 2 frontliners can be a good poking mage from behind with crowd control. Has the potential to reach A tier, but most of the times he's C tier because you don't have a frontline in your dog shit. Mundo tank. Yeah, I think he's okay. Kind of cheesy. Can be frontline, not high crowd control. Sinch very cheesy. Shen also cheesy. Same for Momo. These are like, it's like Malphite support, pretty much, where they have some value in team fights, but at the same time, they're pretty shit in the laning phase, and they are pretty weak in the early game as well. Blitzcrank, just trash. I hate Blitzcrank players. I do. There's like 1 out of 10 Blitzcrank players, I would say, you are the GOAT. I love you. And 9 out of 10, I would say, I hate you. You're so bad. I don't know. I never want to see a Blitzcrank player again. But yeah, the one player makes them like B tier, and the others are like F tier. But yeah, that's about it for the tier list. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Make sure to leave a like and subscribe. Write down below your opinion in the comment section. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe. I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.
Fire spreading all around my room. My world's so bright, it's hard to breathe, but that's alright.